Welcome back to Formula One Expresso News. This is, of course, a podcast from me, Terry, Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans, where I bring you all of the latest on a weekly basis from the paddock to the podcast via my shed. This week, we're going to be talking about the speculation that Franco Colapinto is about to replace Jack Doohan. We're going to be talking about the Concorde Agreement after Stefano Domenicalo's latest remarks about that one. Backtracking from the FIA with regards to swearing. George coming out and saying that he should be a two-time world champion, and what exactly did he mean by that? And we're also going to be looking at Cadillac with their launch, and of course, that huge, intense speculation that they're about to announce Sergio Perez as one of their drivers for 2026. So, if all of that takes your fancy, you've got me for 30 minutes. Grab your coffee, let's sit down, strap in, and give us some full beans. Okay, right, let's get cracking, shall we? Franco Colapinto. Now, this has, of course, been a massive storyline since he signed from Williams in that 10 million plus deal with regards to being an Alpine reserve driver. We said at the time there would be speculation. Many mounted it would be 3, 4, 5 races with regards to him replacing Jack Doohan. And it seems like that couldn't be actually far off the truth. Now, Alpine themselves are saying that there is no change in terms of their driver lineup that's inbound. They're saying that they're happy with Jack Doohan, they're giving him more time, and that actually they're really pleased with where he's performing with regards to the start of the season and what they expected. However, this is coming from one of Franco's sponsors who did a radio, television, podcast, whatever it was that they were doing. Now, all through the interview, they were basically asked multiple times, when will we see Franco in an Alpine car? To which point, his sponsor basically said, I don't know. Nothing strange there, you may be saying. You may be sort of sat there thinking, what on earth are you going on about, Terry? Well, it was when he thought he was off air is where the real fraudulent slip come. Now, this could, of course, be very deliberate. We are talking about somebody who's one of Franco's sponsors, so we'd naturally be keen to see him in the car, I must add. It could just be a very strategic marketing move to get noise about Franco. We know that Franco's obviously going to be in Miami. We know there's going to be a lot of media interest around Franco being in Miami. However, he said when he was off the air, but was still mic'd up, that he thought that Franco would be in the car from Imola, which is, of course, the next race out. Interestingly, I said that this would be about the change if they were going to make it, because it kind of fitted. I thought it might have been for Miami, just based on pure marketing, if I'm being honest. But it seems that, Jack Doohan could be in trouble with regards to Franco replacing him. Now, like I say, I must stress, at this point, Alpine is saying absolutely not. Jack Doohan signed a new sponsorship deal, so they reckon there's about £10 million worth of sponsorship coming in. We know he's got one with Xbox, I believe it is, that's coming out. We also know that he's got a few other sponsorship deals that's been tied up as well. So it seems that Jack Doohan is bringing in money to Alpine, and it seems like actually he's certainly in a lot more of a stronger position by bringing in those financial contributions. We obviously know that he's managed by Flavio Briatore as well. So in terms of having his boss on site, it kind of makes sense. But we also know that Flavio is completely ruthless and will make the change. Now, obviously, Franco has been pretty quiet since he joined Alpine, if I'm being honest. We haven't seen a lot about him. We have not really heard a lot. Even in the races, we've obviously had Rio do the Japan one, I believe it was, for Alpine, and then also we've seen him then go off to Haas to do the reserve role there, and we've also seen that obviously they've been taking Paul Aaron with regards to some of the races as well. They've actually been split it between the reserves. As we know, they seem to have plenty of them currently in the Alpine garage. So whether or not all this is being geared towards an inbound Franco, I honestly don't know. The Alpine car hasn't started off that well, to be honest. It's an Evolution last year's car. I think that Jack's done okay. Yes, there's been a couple of mistakes. Obviously, we know about Australia and obviously what happened with the DRS in Japan as well. But then Pierre hasn't been setting the world alight either. So I think that's probably worked in Jack Doohan's favour. With regards to Franco, I've said this many times, I don't believe for 1 minute you would spend the sort of money that Alpine spent on Franco to leave him as a reserve driver. That's my point. I really struggle to see the business sense in that, and ultimately that is what Flavio Briatore is all about: business, results and money. And I find it really strange with Franco sat on the sidelines. Yes, I don't believe the speculation that Jack's got a 6-7 race contract, which we talked about on here many times before. I think that he's got a season-long contract, but I also realise that contract is, You know, as George Russell said the other week, it's not really worth the paper it's written on, and we can quite easily rip these contracts up nowadays and make a driver swap. So all I will say is watch this space. I do think that we will be seeing Franco. Whether or not it will be after the summer break or even before that, I'm not entirely sure, but I firmly believe that we won't go the full season without seeing Franco Colapinto in that car at some point. Now, with regards to rookie sessions, he obviously no longer qualifies for rookie sessions. Doohan would have obviously, in theory, knocked 2 of those on the head because he was classed as a rookie. So that would leave 1, I believe, with Alpine, because I think by the rules of it, I'm not too sure of it because they have changed, but I'm pretty sure that Jack Doohan's first 2 free practice 1 sessions were classed as 2 rookie sessions. Rio did the other one. But in fact, Rio replaced Jack Doohan, if I remember rightly, so that wouldn't count either. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure where they stand with rookie sessions, but obviously Franco, either way, doesn't fit the bill for that anyway. He's in too many races, so that's kind of an irrelevant point here. So Alpine will need to get him in a car pretty soon if they're going to use him for something. Hasn't done much TPC testing, so again, we haven't seen a lot of data about that one. The one thing I will say is Paul Aaron's TPC testing has quite good from what I can gather from sources inside Alpine, from what they're saying. So they say that Alpine have actually been pleasantly surprised with his performance in the test in the previous cars as well. So Paul Aaron certainly isn't being written off just yet. But yeah, like I say, Franco Colapinto from Imola is the latest rumour, but that is purely from his sponsor, which, as I said, could just be doing it to get himself in the news and also to maybe put some pressure on Alpine, because ultimately, if you're a sponsor, you'd want to see you driving the car, wouldn't you? Right. We've got Concorde Agreement, and obviously Stefano Domenicali's comments about that this week. Stefano's come out and said that the Concorde Agreement with regards to the commercial side and Formula One side is agreed with all of the teams. Now, this is all 11 teams because obviously Cadillac are now on board. This is why we're seeing this big push by Cadillac, which we'll come on to later on in the show. But ultimately, because they're now part of the Concorde Agreement, or they will be once it's all officially signed, they've been accepted, so they're as good as in it. They're obviously now allowed to sit in negotiations, talk, and obviously make that move. You'll see that Cadillac have now got Formula One in their team name. That's because they've been improved. Lots of things going on behind the scenes with that, which, like I say, we'll come on to at the end of the show. But Concorde Agreements, this I alluded to all the way back in Australia, I believe it was, at the start of the season. So pretty much the Formula One teams and Formula One haven't really got that much issue with the financial side of the Concorde Agreements. We all know they're making a lot of money. We all know that actually in terms of the reimbursement, there's still the legacy deals in there for teams like Ferrari. There's still the point system in there. It seems like the point system isn't changing in terms of the prize money. They're just adding 11th team. Obviously, with Cadillac coming on board, they're going to pay the teams that dilution fee of coming into Formula One, so they've got to pay off on that one, which they're obviously quite happy about, and they're happy to take that one. So with regards to this, the commercial side of the Formula One and the Formula One team's Concorde Agreement is pretty much done. It's dusted. Everyone's happy with it. This is on the back of what they've done over previous years. Actually, agreeing with Formula One has actually been quite an easy process for the teams and Formula One management. It's something they've actually prided themselves on being, sort of very quick, very transparent, very easy to deal with. That's how it's done. The big stumbling block is, of course, the FIA part of it, so the governance side of it. That's the part which isn't agreed. Now, a few factors, of course, in this one. First and foremost, Ramadan's had a massive impact on this from a procedural point of view. So Mohammed Ben Sulayem hasn't done anything with regards to meetings and stuff, or certainly not as many, been to Grand Prix and things, because he's obviously been observing Ramadan. That's now finished, so he's now attending Grand Prix, and we can get the ball rolling on that one. There is some talk and some speculation, though, about what the FIA are demanding from the Concorde Agreement. Now, we know that that's their main source of income. We know that the teams paying them is their main source of income. We know that the commercial money they get from Formula One is their biggest income. But what the teams are asking now is they're asking for the clearance on the governance. Now, that's on the back of a lot of things we're seeing. So this talk of engine regulations, we're seeing all of this talk on changing it all up. We're seeing the swearing ban, the drivers being unhappy. There's a lot of talk from the teams they're not happy with what the FIA are doing. Now, there's no suggestion of a split as such because both people need each other. Formula One can't run it without the FIA because they haven't got the structure in place to marshal it, manage it, and to put a race on. And likewise, the FIA can't break it on their own because they're worried about the team split, and they're also worried about actually putting on a show, and they're also worried about actually how are they going to promote it and sell tickets and do the other side. And they'd probably like to have a go at it. I'm being brutally honest on that one. However, they haven't got the facilities currently to do that. So therefore, they can't split. So no one's talking about split at the moment. It is, however, what the teams are saying are from the Concorde Agreement. Now, we know there's been speculation about the FIA asking for more money from the teams with regards to entry fees, money being put into the Concorde Agreement to pay for things. And also, there will be some commercial stuff that Mohammed Ben Sulayem will be wanting back. So this is where Formula One management traditionally have had this monopoly on all of the media, all of the rights, all of the footage. It's believed that the FIA do want some of this back to sort of help them promote the business and help them sort of look at other ways to gain revenue, I suppose, is probably why they're looking at it. So what we don't know is, of course, is how much is being asked for. We don't know how different that is to what's on the table. And, of course, we don't know exactly how the teams and Formula One management are going to react to that. So that's what we're waiting from. But from a commercial side, it's all done and dusted. Now, the Concorde Agreement is due to run out at the end of this year, so it's still got a fair while to run. With the big elements of the commercial side already done, we are just talking about the governance one, so it kind of feels like it's not going to be a major issue in terms of going forward because we've got those bits done. Now, for those who don't know, the commercial agreement normally lasts for about 5 years, and it's the contract that holds all three together, so the FIA, Formula One, and the team. So basically, it's the agreement that talks about the governance, the money, how everything's divvied up, how teams get paid, how much they get paid, etc., etc. So it's basically not the sporting regulations and technical regulations, they come from the FIA, but more the money side and how things are paid and how teams are with regards to that side of things. Like I say, I don't think this is going to be a major problem. It depends how much the FIA decide to push. We know it's an election year. We know that Mohammed Ben Sulayem has got some ideas that he wants to put forward, especially with it being an election year. So actually, there's a lot of talk. He may use the opportunity to try and push it to see where he can go. There's also, of course, the option that he could backtrack on that one and sort of step down if there's a big sort of blockage from the teams and Formula One management in terms of what they want. It all depends on what it is. We don't know the details of the Concorde Agreement. We never do. We've seen a leaked document a few years ago that gives us an idea of what it is, but we don't actually see this document. It's not a public document, so therefore it's not something we can sort of look at and go, that's what they talk about, that's what they want. It's purely a private, confidential set of discussions. So, yeah, as soon as you know any more, I'll bring you that one. But as it stands, the teams, all 11 teams, including Cadillac and Formula One, in an agreement. We're just waiting for the FIA and the governance part. Right, talk about the FIA. Here we go. We are talking about the potential backtrack on swearing. So this has been such a controversial subject since it came into effect. Now, the FIA president has come out this week and said, on the back of the feedback that he's had from the World Rally drivers, we know, of course, they pretty much went on strike in terms of media duties. There is potential of some backtrack. So he's not saying he's definitely going to backtrack. He's saying that he's willing to relook at it and see where it's going. As a former rally driver himself, he understands that actually the sort of demands on the drivers and also the emotions and all those things play a part in it. So he's willing to listen and work on that. What he said is categorically it won't be disappearing completely because he feels there's a place for it within the sport. So this will be more of a leniency thing. Now, with regards to this, we are seeing quite a bit of leniency from the FIA on this. We've had a couple of comments from Formula One, which of course is the most high profile out of the sports. And we've had a couple of comments that have, last season probably going to get you in hot water. This season didn't seem to got you into hot water. There seems to be this big general consensus that actually with regards to swearing, if it's on a team radio, then it's actually not going to get you in trouble. But if it's in a press conference or a media interview or something like that, it's going to get you in trouble from that point of view. That seems to be the line that FIA is taking in on this one. We know there's been a bit of talk about Formula One blocking out Max Verstappen's comments in the last race. So this is where he said something about bloody marvellous or something like that, and they blocked out the bloody. A lot of people going, online going, should they, shouldn't they? I think it's one of those words that Formula One management deemed could be interpreted as a swear word, so kind of blocked it out anyway. I don't think they were trying to be misleading on it, like someone suggested. We know obviously we had the China incident with Lewis and the radio messages that Formula One management kind of played a bit of a political game on it where they didn't play all the messages and kind of did it for views to make it look good. With regards to this one, it seems like it's more of a case of would bloody be classed as a swear word, and Formula One management decided to, as the broadcast channel decided to play safe and they decided to bleep out and do it that way. So we are seeing some backtracking on this. We are seeing some things where actually the FIA don't seem stringent to take this to the next level as what they made in the past. But like I said, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is talking very much that this is going to be a revision of the rules, not a backing down of the rules. So whatever we see, I think we'll still get it with press conferences. I think he talked about team radios when, emotions are running high, something's happened on track, and the driver says, or give someone the bird or whatever that looks like on the track. I think, what they're saying now is that's going to be acceptable in terms of not get you in trouble. But actually, if you were sat in a media interview and you drop a few swear words in, that's more likely to get you in hot water with the FIA. So that's where I think this one going. That to me makes the most sense. That to me, kind of says that's the right way of doing this, because I don't see any other reason why you wouldn't do it. Like I've said this many times on here. For me, when they're driving and things happen, it's a spur of the moment. It's a instinct. It's a heated moment decision. It's an instant reaction to something that's happened. With a media interview, they've had time to process. Yes, I know they get interviewed straight after the race, which is a little bit more difficult, don't get me wrong. Emotion is still high after that, but ultimately, it is a situation where they should know they're being interviewed. They should know it's being live broadcast, so therefore they should be more aware of that, is what I'm probably saying. We obviously don't know what happened on the track between Mohammed and also Max Verstappen after the last race, and obviously Max's penalty. There seemed to be something that certainly went on the track. I don't know what that is. There was clearly a conversation in which Max decided afterwards that he wasn't going to talk about anything hardly, and he was going to do the bare minimum. And then that's the problem the FIA have got. Now, the FIA mandate the drivers have to do media. That's part of their contract. They have to do it. Unless they've got an exemption to do it, like we obviously saw with Max this week in Miami. But likewise, they have to do these media interviews. Now, with regards to Formula One and the FIA, Formula One will be putting pressure on the FIA, because ultimately, that's what they use to sell Formula One. So they use the on-track action, don't get me wrong, but they also want to sell the stories. They want to sell the media. They want to sell the interviews. They want to, at the moment, they're trying to bargain rights with America for, 100-odd million or whatever it is a year. Now, you can't do that if no one's talking in the media press conference. You can't do that if everyone's sat silent. It's not really a great product to sell, is it? So I would imagine there's been a lot of pressure on the FIA from Formula One management to say, look, we really need the drivers to be talking in the press conferences. We really need them to be actually engaging with us and obviously, the rest of the media. Media sells. This is what Formula One and all these media outlets rely on. They rely on the interviews. They rely on all of these things to produce the articles, to produce the clips, to produce the videos. If the drivers aren't talking, it's going to make for a really hard media coverage, which will in turn obviously affect everything. Without the media coverage, without the clicks, without the likes, without the sharing, you suddenly have a decline in audience, and suddenly you start having problems. So I think this has come from not only the drivers with the GDPA being asked about it and obviously having their input. We've got the World Rally drivers having their input quite clearly, as we said. This ultimately is a sensible decision by the FIA, and one which I think will be welcomed by everybody else, and one I think that also Mohammed knows he can't win. Ultimately, I think the rally drivers have shown that one. So, a sensible move. Hopefully, those revisions will go through and come soon, and everyone can kind of put it to bed and move on. Because ultimately, I don't think anybody really cares that much, if I'm honest. George, sip of the coffee for this one. George, what have you been up to? So, George Russell has probably, failed in his media training this week is the best way to describe this. I get what George has been saying, by the way. So let me just paint you a bit of a story. So this all comes about on an interview where George has been talking about life without Lewis. And obviously, George himself is in that precarious position. We talked about this on the podcast last week, where he doesn't know where he's going to drive. He wants to keep pushing his name out there. He wants to keep promoting Team George because he needs the seat for next year. Now, he wants to stay with Mercedes. Mercedes haven't offered him that yet because they obviously wait for Max, blah, blah, blah. Now, George at the moment is trying to push Mercedes into signing him. He wants Mercedes to make him the number one driver for the next few years, and he wants that contract because ultimately that's what he wants. He wants the security of being a Mercedes driver going into the new regulations, especially if this engine is half as good as what we've been told. Now, in his interview, he talked quite open and honest about the challenges of racing with obviously Lewis. And in it, he basically alluded to the fact that if he had been at Mercedes a few years earlier, so in the time, pre-2022, excuse me, before 2022, when the car was at its best, and, when he obviously drove in place of Lewis when he got COVID, that side of things, he's saying that if he had finished above Lewis, he would have been a world champion. That's what he meant. What he's saying is, in the past, if you had beaten Lewis in the Drivers' Championship, you would be world champion because of how good Lewis and Mercedes as a partnership were, and how they were dominating the sport. That's what he meant by it, but it's come out all wrong and been completely twisted, to which everyone's gone, George is saying he should be a two-time world champ. I get what he's saying. It's pure and simple. He's just saying, ultimately, in the past, if you'd beaten Lewis, like Rosberg did, you'd be world champion, because Mercedes are at a point when they're at the high point of the game, and actually there weren't many drivers over those dominant years that beat Lewis and weren't a world champion, because Lewis was obviously normally in the top two in the championship. That's where he's going with this, but it's just come out all wrong. It's just come out terrible. It's come out like he's looked entitled. It's come out like he's blown his own trumpet. Now, don't get me wrong, George had a great start to the season. I don't think George is saying that he's better than Lewis. He might be. He certainly probably does lack the self-confidence on that one. Any good driver wouldn't, let's be honest about it. Do I think he's a better driver than Lewis? No, I don't. Certainly not Lewis at his peak, because that's the other thing. The one thing we talk about as well is we talk about Lewis at his peak. So if you go back 5 years, I think we could all sit here and say that Lewis was a better driver then than what he is now. So actually, would George have beaten him? No, he probably wouldn't have. So actually, it's kind of irrelevant. Lewis would have probably wiped the floor of him like he did with most of his teammates at the time, and therefore would have been still a world champion. That's the point with this. So I think George was trying to do the right thing by saying, yes, I would have finished with Lewis and I would have been a world champion. I think ultimately it's backfired on him. He's looked entitled, he's looked quite arrogant, and it's come across completely wrong. And then in true media fashion, it's been twisted into something else in terms of a storyline, packaged off, gone off down the road, shared multiple times, and boof. You've then got a very different narrative on what George actually said. So the way I read it and the way I've looked at the article and the way I've sort of interpreted it is, what he was saying is there aren't many people who can finish ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the World Drivers' Championship and not be a world champion. But obviously he's managed that a couple of times in since he's been Lewis's teammates. Yeah, read into that one what you want to. That's where he's going with it. That's what he was saying. That's what he meant by it. Has he got the confidence he could be world champion? Absolutely. Of course he has. Do I think he's got it? George isn't top of my list as drivers, as I'd say, is a potential world champion, which is probably wrong, because he's been, I've called him Mr. Invisible quite a few times this year, where he's just popped up on podiums when you least expect it, which is a sort of drivers you need from someone in the World Drivers' Championship hunt. I don't think he's the most naturally gifted driver on the grid, if I'm honest. I think he's done a good job for Mercedes. I think the car's a lot better than what it was. I also think he's probably benefiting from Kimi learning the ropes. It reminds me of very much that Lando and Oscar relationship from a couple of years ago, when Oscar came in, is a fast driver like Kimi is, but needs to learn Formula One and needs to learn how to manage tyres, how to manage race pace, how to, put that one lap under pressure on the board so you get a good starting position, so you're not all the way back, fighting your way back. I think he's benefiting from that currently, and you would expect him to beat Kimi Antonelli in terms of the Drivers' Championship. If he didn't, he would be in even more troubles. Nothing I'm seeing from George is kind of shocking me, but the one thing I will say is I do think that once Kimi comes up to scratch and actually, learns all these things that he's currently learning, that might be a difference in the pecking order, as we're seeing with McLaren and the two drivers now. So I think George is benefiting from that. I think that, come the end of next season, or the middle of next season, we'd be expecting Kimi to be at a stage where he's challenging George, which I think could be a very different timeline in terms of what that looks like and what that is going forward for Mercedes. George, like I said, just wants that new contract. He's desperate for that new contract. He wants his future secure. He's obviously been talking about, like I said last week, about how Mercedes don't make deals this start of the season anyway. They leave it late. It makes sense for Mercedes to leave it late as well. They can see if George can react to pressure, see how George is to being a team leader. So yeah, but George, a two-time world champion, I think it's a nice notion, George, but I don't think so. I still think Lewis might have got a better year if we're talking Lewis Hamilton of 5 years ago. Right, Cadillac. Oh, they're here once again. Cadillac launch and Checo speculation. Oh my word, this speculation is rife, isn't it? Checo is in Miami, therefore he's signing the contract. Now, don't get me wrong, Checo is in talks with Cadillac to come back for 2026. Absolutely, he's the name in the frame. Absolutely, he's being considered. To backtrack all of this, Cadillac are launching they say they're launching their colour scheme, which might be their livery, it might not be. So they've got a big event planned this week in Miami. They've got one of the FIA show cars similar to the Audi launch, and basically they've turned, I think it's the Queen's Club into the Cadillac Club for the weekend. A lot of pomp and ceremony about it. A lot of buzz about it. It's their first, foray into Formula One in terms of a big launch. Lots of General Motors, sort of big wigs there as well. They talk about pop stars, stuff like that. Miami is a good place to launch it. Why wouldn't you? They don't want to leave it as late as obviously Austin and Las Vegas, because by then it'd be too late. So it makes perfect sense for General Motors to be launching in Miami. With regards to driver lineup, so latest we have, and this is latest that we've got from the paddock. No driver lineup is expected to be announced this week. Fatal last words, you watch something get announced now. But as it stands currently, the talk is there is no lineup to be announced this week. Yes, Checo is in Miami. Yes, Checo is at the Grand Prix. However, Checo has a massive range of commercial obligations still. He's still heavily involved in a lot of the sponsors that are involved in Formula One as well. So we got his tequila brand is involved in it. We know that Kit Kat's a sponsor for Formula One as well. So there is a lot of commercial reasons to why Checo would be in Miami for the Grand Prix. Now, don't get me wrong, Checo will be talking to Cadillac or General Motors, whatever we're calling them, with regards to a seat for 2026. He is in the frame. He is in negotiations. He also spoke to Lawrence Beretta and said that actually he's had more than one option to come back for 2026, which is quite an interesting take. I'm not too sure who else would have an option for Checo. If I'm honest, for 2026, I'm not too sure what that looks like and where he'd fit into the grid for next season. I thought it'd be Cadillac or nothing, but he seems to think there's more out there. I do think it would be a sensible move. I do think it'd be one that makes a lot of sense. We talked about, obviously, Joe on last week's show being named potentially. We've also talked about Vesti being involved. Felipe Drugovich is obviously doing some driving for Cadillac in terms of some other series as well. So he's been put in the frame. Obviously, vast experience with Aston Martin as a reserve driver, is looking for an opportunity in Formula One. Brazilian, so would tick a lot of boxes that way as well for General Motors. Obviously, Checo would be Mexican. So there is a lot of talk about these drivers bringing a lot of commercial side of things. Bernie said that he thinks Schumacher would be a good name for him because in America the Schumacher name's huge, so he thinks that obviously Mick should come back. So there's a commercial side. It's like anything. It depends on who you want to be in your seat and what the benefit is. We're talking commercial, we're talking results. What we talk about here, because that's going to be a big part of it. Now, for the first couple of years, you'd expect Cadillac to be building a budget, building a brand up, building sponsors up. So you'd expect the commercial side to be quite important to them rather than the delivery side. You'd also expect them to go with drivers who could potentially make a difference if the opportunity arrives. Now, for me, Sergio Perez is one of those drivers who can make a difference if the points are on the board in terms of opportunity or even the potential wins there. He's got that ability to convert it into that. So I think that makes him a really good fit. Plus, of course, the amount of money that comes into it with regards to Carlos Slim and the back end that Checo gets. So I do think that there's a really big side of this. But with regards to this week, I think we'll have to wait, because the other thing is as well, I don't understand why Cadillac would box himself into a corner and make an announcement now when they've got all season to make a decision. They are in a position of strength. They don't need to do anything this side of the summer break. They can play things out. They see what's happening. What if George Russell gets displaced by Mercedes, for example? He would be a prime candidate for Cadillac to come into it based on the fact that they would want him. So I don't see what they gain from going early with this, unless they're going to go with just one driver to start off with and leave the other one quite open-ended. But for me, I think it's what we said. I think Checo's there purely on commercial agreements. I think we will see pictures of him talking to Cadillac, and I think we will get a lot of pomp and ceremony about the Cadillac, but I think it's going to be about the car rather than the drivers themselves. That's probably famous last words. As I record this, you watch a driver announcement come out. But as I understand it, no driver announcement planned for this week, just the actual launch of the car using an FIA show car. So even the car won't give you a clue to what their car's going to look like in terms of design. Full steam ahead for Cadillac. If you follow them on LinkedIn, you'll see there's loads of jobs going, loads of opportunities going. They are literally, bursting at the seams to get people on board. So on a genuine note, if you are local to like the Silverstone area and you do want to work in Formula One, it might be worth just checking out the Cadillac jobs, because there are a wide range of jobs going on, including like graduate jobs and stuff like that coming up. So if yeah, Formula One is something you want to get into. It's certainly worth giving Cadillac a look at in terms of jobs if you're based in and around that Silverstone base that they're going to be launching their Formula One bid from. That's for sure. Loads of opportunities there, and it might just be a good opportunity to get into Formula One. So just a bit of careers advice from someone who's in a shed and doesn't work in Formula One at all, and kind of wishes he was younger. So yeah, check it out. But yeah, that's what we got. So with all that in mind, I think that's it for this show. Obviously, we're in Miami this week, a sprint weekend. I'm expecting McLaren to be strong. I'm expecting it to be a battle of Oscar and Lando. Lando will want to bounce back after some poor results. Oscar will be looking to assert himself as number one. Max Verstappen is in Miami. We know he missed media day due to either the birth or the imminent birth of his and Kelly's child. But he is in Miami. He has landed, so he's taking part in the weekend. So whatever's happened, whether or not the baby's here or whether or not the baby's due, he is actually racing this weekend. I'm expecting Max, he's got a new floor on that Red Bull. They've made some upgrades last time out. They actually changed some internal layouts, which doesn't get listed on the FIA documents. They brought the floor forward from Imola. It was actually ready in Jeddah. So even though a lot of people talk about this new floor, it was actually ready to go in Jeddah, as I put on my update this week. They have got some things coming as well. Ferrari looking at some sort of quick fix options, then any major updates are from Spain onwards. So they have got some updates to the car, but they're not major ones. They are more tweaking like the back end and some bits that they know is wrong with the SF25. McLaren have been quite coy around their updates. So we haven't seen that. Mercedes have got an update package arriving in Imola, so I'm not expecting a lot this weekend, but they have got an update package arriving next time out in Imola as well. So Imola will be the start of the big major updates for the teams. There are a few teams doing this sort of intermediate with regards to the wing, because we know that the flexi wing regulation comes in from Barcelona. So I think the teams are kind of trying a few stuff. So don't be surprised if we see a lot of wing changes in free practice with teams just trying out what this new wing looks like without the flex. I don't think they use them in qualifying in the race because they lose time. So why would they do it? But don't be surprised if you hear of updates coming, because when they bring an update, the FIA check it and they also check the design of it. So the teams may also be doing a bit of that. They may be bringing it so the FIA can check it, listen it as an update, using it for free practice, get the data, and then taking it off, because ultimately it's slower than the flexi wing that they've currently got on the car. So I'm expecting a bit of that happening over the next couple of races. We know that Ferrari talk about that. We know that Red Bull are also talking about that as well. So there are a few teams who I think will be just seeking clarification from the FIA on exactly what the new rules are with regards to the flexi wing and how far they can push it ultimately, because that's what is being changed. So don't be surprised if you see updates. As I said before, with regards to the updates, just because it's at the track doesn't mean it's on the car. And I know with regards to the new floor with Red Bull, there is only one available, which is going on Max's car, not Yuki's car. So again, I think they'll run it, see how it goes. Sprint weekend obviously means that you can change it after the sprint race itself. So it gives you a lot of data in terms of the car in race trim. It gives you a lot of data in terms of how the car performs in a race condition. That sort of 100 kilometer sprint that we do is actually quite handy for the teams. And yeah, Miami, let's see what this one brings. I'm quite excited for it. So I'll be at Silverstone with Dad again. We're on the rooftop party, as we are most years. Obviously, Dad missed it last year, so it'd be good to go that one. We were at Silverstone last week. We saw Callum doing his talk on his book, which obviously he wrote for Red Bull. That was a really great night, to be fair. His book looks great as well. I've started reading it and been putting it off while I've been waiting to pick one up from the man himself. That was really good night out. And then we watched some GB3 racing and some British GT Championship as well. So that was quite cool to watch that. We stayed at Escapades for the first time. Never stayed there before, but that was really nice. We had one of the lodges, so not a trackside one, a bit like a Centre Parks lodge, where you got a kitchen, you got a dining room. Let's say dining room, but you got a kitchen with somewhere you can sit and eat. You had a balcony, you could go out, a seating area, separate bedroom, couple of toilets in there. So actually, it was quite a nice change from the hotel, where you got a bit of room to actually spread out and enjoy it a bit more. Wasn't bad either, because there weren't a lot of racing going on. Obviously, I dread to think how much the prices are on a race weekend, but with regards to a cheap stay at Silverstone, if you are looking for one, can certainly recommend Escapades if you haven't got a huge budget and you're outside of race weekend. You got private parking by there as well, nice and easy to get to. Just drive it to the main gates and tell them you're going to Escapades and they divert you in. I'm sure it's going to be a lot more difficult on a Formula One weekend. But yeah, it's really good. I recommend it. We had breakfast included with ours, where you go to the main part of that. It's got a bar there as well. We've got a restaurant there. And that does overlook the track, and you can go on the roof and watch it from there. So if you do get a chance, go check it out, because we had a good time there. They looked after us well. That's it. I've taken up too much of your time. That is, of course, Expresso News. There's just enough time to say, if you haven't already, just drop me a follow on whatever platform you listen to it to. I don't like the word subscribe because it makes it sound like you get money for it, and we all know that we don't. So for me, let's call it a follow. So if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that follow button. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, hit the follow button. One, it helps the podcast in terms of exposure and get at the rankings. And secondly, you'll also be notified when the episode drops. So if you are following the podcast, it will send you that little notification to say, actually, a new episode's just dropped for you, just to make it easier on there. And that's all I got this week. So hope you enjoyed the Grand Prix. Hope you enjoyed the racing. And I will see you next time out on Formula One Expresso News, brought to you by me, Terry. And this is Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans, the podcast. Catch you next time.